Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Of course, here with Curt. A lot of questions, a lot of exciting posts. We're going to cover, some filings, etc. But first things first, Curt, how are you?
I'm good. Jason, you've got your casual look with your blue sport shirt. I've got my summer buzz cut, so we've got the summer vibe going for this call.
Hey, we're in a heat wave. Not as bad as
Oh,
Europe.
that's right. I think the entire world's in a heat wave right now.
Feels like 40 up in Toronto, so it's hot to say the least. But
Yeah.
let's dive into it. I mean, you made some posts on Telegram. I see a lot of posts kind of around. You want to maybe just intro that first for anyone who hasn't seen the Telegram posts? I know it all kind of spreading from a filing and some filings that QYOU has made. Do you want to just pick it up and we'll go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to explain it on the one hand high level, but on the other hand with enough depth so that people can kind of understand what we're up to here. The bottom line is that we've been talking for a while about an uplist to NASDAQ. First and foremost, no absolute decisions have been made about anything other than that we want to be in a position where we can do that whenever we decide that it's time to do it for a number of reasons, which I'll talk about in a second. So the reason we had an AGM and asked for a shareholder approval to do a rollback was related to that. The reason that we filed what's called a shelf prospectus to do a financing is related to that. The reason we've been doing a number of other filings that are related to what has to happen under what's called MJDS, which is the jurisdiction under which we would do the uplist, and a number of other things that NASDAQ requires. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure which of those have been filed publicly or not. But the bottom line is that we're not being, secretive or hiding the cards or anything in terms of the fact that we believe that a NASDAQ uplist makes a lot of sense for us. The exact timing of that is what is still, under a ton of discussion. And so everything that people are seeing, when you see something where there's a filing for a $30 million shelf prospectus, I got a lot of questions from concerned shareholders about like, what are you doing, and you have to put some limit into that. You have to attach a number to it. You just can't file and say, we don't know how much we're going to raise. So you try to do it in a way that you put a high end that you're never going to, at least initially imagine that you're going to raise beyond that amount, put that in there, get all the work done that's necessary to be able to qualify for that, and put that there as a placeholder. Okay, we could actually uplist in a way which we wouldn't have to do any financing attached with the uplist, and that may be the direction we go. We might do something after that. These are all questions that have a lot of different, it's like playing chess,
Yeah, it's just nice to have the optionality, right? And I think, and I saw some other people posting, it's extremely common to see 20 to 30 mil, and even, it's still common to see 50 mil as part of a shelf prospectus. Yeah. For things like this. And being able to decide, hey, who knows, you guys list, there's a ton of other things that happen, and being able to pull the trigger on something is important. Do we want to kind of, I got some questions like, why would an uplisting to NASDAQ benefit the Q? Do we want to kind of talk about that?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, there's a lot of people that talk about us getting supported by institutional investors, and that's a huge goal of ours, and it's something that we think can be really beneficial. I mean, the bottom line of what's driving all of this is that the business units are all growing. Okay, so we have a business that's succeeding, it's getting bigger, there's tremendous opportunity, the macro economics of what's happening in India and what's happening in social video and social commerce and the creator economy, all these things are lifting up irrespective of whatever we're doing. We're in the middle of that, and that's lifting our business. I mean, we expect every quarter this year to have record revenue results that we'll be achieving. And so the reality is that our business is growing. Well, that's decoupled somewhat from what the market conditions are. Just because the market conditions now are lousy doesn't mean that our business is lousy. And so there's a lot of variance between companies like ours and where we're at. Well, the bottom line is that we cannot get U.S. institutions to even take a meeting with us to talk about investing into a company that's a 15-cent stock on a Toronto venture exchange or an OTC QB listing. They can't do it. They literally have charters of where they can put their money, what they can invest in, and they're not allowed to make an investment even if they thought it was the best story they'd seen in their lives. And so what we need to do is we need to increase the share price through some form of a rollback in order to be able to go in and get institutions engaged. Now, part of that also is attached to NASDAQ. There's Canadian institutions, obviously, which also fit into that definition of not being able to invest in penny stocks. And there's a hell of a lot of US institutions which absolutely won't do it and might not even do it on a TSXV listed company. You have to be on a major exchange in the US for them to be investors. So that's a big, big reason for us looking at all of this, because we could raise capital. If we chose to raise capital, we could raise capital under our current conditions, but that's not what the point is. The point is to be able to get a new grade of investors interested in the company. And the reason we want to get that new grade of investors interested in the company is because we know the company is going to keep growing. And at some point, the markets will return to health, whether that's whenever that might be. And so we see this as a opportunity, interestingly enough, in a down market where listing sooner than later may make a hell of a lot of sense. And that's what we're preparing, to be able to do if we choose to do that.
Yeah. No, so getting institutions in, obviously a huge thing. And I know that and we've talked about them, I think, before in some Q&As in the past where, there is set institutions in the US looking for emerging market investments, and
yes,
you guys could easily play into that. The other part I wanted to ask is, I'm sure, with the amount of viewers you guys are getting, some of these people would love to be able to also own the stock. Hey, I love the channel. Maybe I could own the stock. I know and we already see European investors or Asian investors that are trying to buy on the venture or the OTCs extremely hard. Well, the nice part about being on NASDAQ is basically anyone in the world can find a way to get your stock. I'm sure that's probably an influence as well.
Yeah, we have a ton of, just for stepping outside of the institutional side, from a retail investor side, I get emails almost every week with somebody complaining that they can't buy QYOU stock, whether they're coming from Europe or India or US or wherever that it might be. It's not easy on a lot of the platforms that are out there to buy Canadian penny stocks. And so we also feel that there could be an increase in volume and visibility. We also have investors who they just literally will say to me, well, I'm sorry, I just don't really, look at companies that are on exchanges like the venture exchange, and so I only invest in companies that are on major exchanges and major listings. So we believe there's a huge group of investors all the way from retail through institutions that we're leaving off the table completely right now as a result of the exchanges we're on and the price point that we're at. And we also have 400+ million shares outstanding. This is a carryover from deals that we had to do back in the day. We're past that now, and so it makes a lot of sense for us to reduce the overall share count of the company, in addition to all the other reasons that I've been talking about.
Yeah, no, the general takeaway is bigger exchange, bigger pool of people that can participate in both the company, the stock, and everything else, and makes a lot of these conversations that much easier, I'd imagine. And the question came up, being on NASDAQ probably makes talking to brands that want to advertise, as well as I'd imagine potential acquisition targets easier when you're on a major exchange. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're always on the lookout for accretive and I've said before about Chatterbox, a 1 + 1 = 11. 1 + 1 = 3 isn't really even enough for us. It has to be better than that on the M&A side. And so, yeah, if we're going to use paper as part of that transaction, without question, it's better to approach a third party and say, oh, here's our listing on NASDAQ. The fact is that a lot of the companies that people are familiar with that listed on the NASDAQ in the frothy days of early 2021, are suffering as a result of that now. And so, I think you and I have spoken before about the fact that, it's great to buy a house when the market's actually down, if you can make that happen, because that ultimately the real estate market in Toronto and Los Angeles and wherever, is going to go back up. And so hell of a lot better to go out and look for a beach house in Malibu right now than it was a year ago. Because the demand has been reduced because of all the things that are happening economically. So we feel, because our business keeps going upward, because the market is down right now, it feels counterintuitive at first blush, but we think that might be actually the best time to get into a market, because then you can get new investors in and new followers in that see the stock rise and go up. And create momentum from that, because eventually we know the market will return to health. We all know that's going to happen. It's not really a question of if that's going to happen. It's a question of when that's going to happen. And so, we also, none of us know when the bottom has been reached. Is the bottom, I read an article yesterday that somebody's talking about we hit the bottom. Who knows? Point is that there's a number of factors that are involved in this. There's not one reason. And as I said, I think in my Telegram post, keep in mind, I'm a shareholder for a long time now who hasn't sold a share, and I'm not intending on selling a share for a while. And I'm not going to do anything. I'm personally invested into this business in a way. I'm not going to do anything that's going to reduce that if I can help it. I can't control that completely, but our strategy is to increase shareholder value. That's always what we're trying to do. So we're not going to pull the trigger on something that we don't think ultimately is going to increase shareholder value. That's a given.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, look, I think this was a good kind of overall answer to some of the filings, and I think people are probably a little bit excited hearing it. I know it's not 100%. You guys haven't pulled the trigger, but at least the building blocks are there, and gives you guys the option for when you want to do it. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
I think, there's a lot of stuff I'd love to talk about, but I can't because I haven't announced it yet. But the bottom line is that the Chatterbox business keeps growing, and there's a lot of new things we're working on around that. The India channels business keeps growing, and there's a lot of new things we're working on around that. The QUSA influencer marketing business keeps growing, and there's a lot of things we're working on around that.
We do get a lot of questions about that. I mean, there's been some hot movies, at least, that have came out and are coming out, and it looks like that's back into, I wouldn't say full swing, but getting there. But so a lot of questions about the influencer side of the Q. Maybe we can do that on another.
I'll say on that one, stay tuned. We may be talking very, very soon about some of that. Okay. But the thing I was going to add is there's new products and new things we're working on that people don't even know about. If they remember that crazy map that I showed a while ago of kind of our overall vision, there's everything on that map, every box on that sort of chart of where we're headed. Every single one has something being done inside of it right now. And so we just see a massive amount of growth for the business going forward. You'll see that in our financial reports as we roll forward through 2022 and into 2023. So, the business is growing, and the business is solid, and the business is continuing to build. Look, the fire trucks are going off. They're so excited. And so the bottom line is that that's going to ultimately drive everything. Everything's going to be driven not by market conditions or where the overall stock market is or whatever. What's going to drive it is going to be the growth of the actual business. And that's what I feel confident about. And that's why I wake up every day excited about what's happening.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks so much for taking the time to answer some of those questions. You left a little teaser for people to stay tuned, so that's great as well. Sounds like we might be doing another video here pretty soon. But
yeah, we got a lot of news coming in the next couple of months.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for joining. We'll talk again soon.
All right. See you, Jason.